Welcome back. I hope you had a great lunch. We're all on our individual paths through this conference. If you spent the morning reading that fat book, well, good for you. I can promise you that you're going to enjoy this afternoon. To kick off, we have Brad Frost. He is the author of Atomic Design, one of the most influential books on design systems to date. Through the years, we've evolved from brand books to PDF-style guides, to sketch libraries, to living components that exist in functioning software. In his talk, Brad Frost will examine the evolution of design systems and take a look at some of the opportunities and challenges, as well as what the future holds for those who successfully create design systems. Let's see if Brad Frost can make it through his talk without once mentioning Lego.
Hey everybody, this is Brad Frost, and we're going to be talking about the past, present, and future of design systems. So we're going to begin our journey going all the way back in prehistory. Human beings have been communicating with one another visually for at least the last 50,000 years or so, as shown by these cave paintings found in Indonesia. And we've been growing more sophisticated and more advanced and more varied in our communication ever since. So if we fast forward to ancient Egypt, we have the birth of branding, where owners would brand their cattle with an insignia to connotate their ownership over that livestock. And we just kept on evolving and growing more sophisticated into the world of logos. In 1366 AD is when the Stella Artois beer logo was created, and that apparently is the oldest logo still in use today around the world, which is pretty cool. And this is a very brief and glossed over history, so I'm not being comprehensive here, but we do have a lot of advances in technology that advanced how humans communicate with one another, what channels they have available to them. And we have the rise of the Industrial Revolution, which really gave all sorts of new advances in our communications, and also unlocked, what we now know as sort of modern businesses as well. And then in the 1920s through the 1950s, we see the birth and the rise of radio and television, which unlock whole new channels for human communication. And that in turn gives rise to the modern sort of corporate identity and really the birth of the modern sort of branding and marketing industry through the 1960s and 70s. So we see the notion of logos really sort of take on a whole new level of sophistication. These are all logos by the great Saul Bass. But we also see this need to address this multitude of communication channels and touch points. And we see the rise of the corporate identity guideline document, or brand book as it's sometimes known, like this one for NASA by Danny and Blackburn in 1976. So this is for NASA, and they have guidelines for how to use a logo and logos, how the logo gets used on different backgrounds and with different sort of subtitles underneath it and so on. And we see how this works across signage and how the signage system should work, and also how this stuff plays out on aircrafts and spacecrafts and all of these things that are actually still floating around in space today, which is really incredible, right? So what we have in these brand books is an effort to really wrangle how a brand gets communicated across all of these wildly different touch points, right? So we still have these today, even though we've, of course, since digitized them to the world of PDFs and now, of course, websites. So this is from a US-based university that gives their brand identity guidelines and showing how to use their logo, how not to use their logo, how to use their tagline and thinking about their tagline, how to use their typography and what their color palettes are, and so on and so forth, right? So we still have this notion of brand identity guidelines today because of all the myriad different ways we communicate in the world. So fast forward to the 1970s and we see the birth of the user interface by companies like Xerox and early Apple computers. And, this of course unlocks a whole new paradigm, a whole new realm to explore for human communication. And of course that gets a huge shot in the arm with the invention of the World Wide Web by this guy, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And that of course opens the door to a whole new realm of user interface design and really unlocks a whole new realm for human communication, which is, of course, the exciting world we're all still living in today. And just a couple other advancements, you could kind of get really granular here, but I'll just sort of throw out the invention of CSS, first proposed in 1994 and brought forward, which gave us awesome stuff like this, the magical world of GeoCities, really unlocking a brand new world for styling user interfaces. And of course, we see the rise of the web becoming a viable platform for commerce and business, right? So we have Amazon.com and other companies coming online to show what the potential of the web could look like. Here's their first design, which is pretty awesome. And we just kind of kept evolving and growing from there. More companies starting to come online, more communities coming online. Here's MySpace, which gave us the opportunity to hack and customize their own profile styles and stuff, which was a ton of fun for those that did that. But the web continues to evolve and grow and become more mature. And then in 2007, of course, we see the rise of the modern mobile landscape with the release of the iPhone in 2007 and the App Store coming a year later in 2008, in addition to the Android marketplace also in 2008. So now we have these native mobile platforms for which to design and build things in addition to the web, in addition to email, in addition to more traditional communication channels. And in an effort to sort of wrangle that on the web front, at least, dealing with all of this device diversity, we see the rise of responsive web design created by Ethan Marcotte, which allows web developers and designers to create singular web experiences that are able to adapt their layout and experience to whatever device they happen to be viewed on. So that history lesson kind of gets us to the present day. And I think that, one trend is abundantly clear here, which is there's just more. There's just more stuff. And as practitioners, we are on the hook to deliver more, right? We're on the hook to deliver more products and more services, more functionality, more features, more content, to more mediums, to more people that are in more countries that speak more languages, that are using more devices with more browsers and more environments, more screen sizes, more form factors, and more context. Like this is the state of our landscape here, and it's not really slowing down, right? And so what we have here is we have this relatively young digital medium, and we're trying our best, right? So this is a screenshot from a client of mine, a publishing client, and they have several dozen brands. And before their design system existed, they had a bespoke website for each of their brands, right? And what that translated to is just a ton of time, effort, resources to creating and maintaining these experiences, right? All of these buttons, which are taken from a few of their different brand websites, all of these buttons represent a team's time design time, development time, QA time, launch time, and maintenance time, right? This is a lot of time, energy, money, resources that go into creating this, right? And, whenever responsive design came on the scene, we would sort of create 3 comps of the same design, and we would sort of, create a mobile version and a tablet version and a desktop version. And this just simply isn't tenable, right? So we have to quite literally blow this up. We have to blow up this notion. We have to blow up this process for how we've been used to creating digital experiences, but we also quite literally need to blow up our user interfaces. So enter design systems. So design systems came on the scene in 2009, 2010 by a bunch of pioneering women, Natalie Down, Anna Debenham, Laura Kaubeg, Gina Ann, have all been sort of pioneering design systems since before we were calling them design systems. So they took the names of pattern portfolio or pattern library or digital style guide. But the gist is here is a reusable set of UI components with accompanying guidelines to help organizations deliver digital experiences, right? So different people come at it from different angles, right? So designers might think of it in the form of a UI library in a tool like Sketch or Figma or Adobe XD. Developers think of them as a coded component library. Here's a bunch of reusable front-end code that we could put together to build web applications or native applications. And then there's kind of the instruction manual. It's kind of like the IKEA instruction manual that come along with the parts, where here are our components or our guidelines for how to use this stuff properly. Right, so that's the kind of technical aspect of what the heart and soul of a design system is. But I like to kind of reframe a design system as the official story of how your organization designs and builds digital products. And what that does is that sort of opens the door to including a lot of other things in that story, right? There's a lot of ingredients that can be included in an organization's design system. So what we've talked about already is, a UI component library and a UI library and design tools and a reference website. But there's all these other things that could be included, including the brand guidelines that we talked about earlier, but also, user experience guidelines, development guidelines, and even processes for how teams should work together and work with the design system. So anymore, this is how design gets done. Design and development gets done at large organizations, especially. So we have all sorts of now pretty mature and pretty famous design systems out there. Maybe Material Design by Google is the most famous and most sort of visible in the world. We, of course, have the Lightning Design System by the folks at Salesforce. Shopify has theirs called Polaris. I've worked on a number over the last 8.5 years, including this one called Atmos for United Airlines. And we have a whole bunch of other ones rounded up on our resource site, styleguides.io. But so anymore, this is how organizations are designing and building digital products. And the reason for that are many. And we have plenty of other examples of design systems all rounded up on styleguides.io. And there's a reason why so many organizations are reaching for design systems to help tackle this issue of more. Design systems provide so many things and benefits. From a user experience perspective, it results in a more consistent, cohesive experience, right? By having a more consistent user experience, users have less friction, things always behave the same, and they're able to get done what they're trying to get done faster. And that's good for users and that's good for business. But so many of the benefits that design systems provide are for people like us, right? Are the practitioners, the people actually creating these experiences. Because we don't have to redesign and rebuild this button again and again and again and again, people can get things out the door faster than ever by having a pre-built solution that already has all of our best practices baked into it. We could just sort of plug that thing in and get on with our days. And because it's not just about speed, but it's also about quality. Because we're not redesigning that card for the 16th time, the team can focus on higher level tasks, right? We can focus on making things more accessible or performant, responsive, all these other things as well. A design system unlocks a shared vocabulary between disciplines, but also between teams as well. So designers and developers and product people and copy people and content folks and anyone responsible for the success of your digital products are able to speak the same language whenever it comes to your user interface. And that unlocks so much. You spend less time in meetings or bickering in between people, which is huge. A design system keeps being a useful reference as teams, as practitioners go about their product design and development work. Should I use an accordion here? Should I use tabs? The design system's reference site can help give people guidance along the way to ensure that consistency and cohesion. And lastly, and this is a huge one, is that design systems really provide this future-friendly foundation. And what I mean by that is that we're able to build upon and grow these things over time. Design systems really are foundational. They become these repositories for institutional knowledge at an organization, so that as best practices change, as you grow, as you learn things, as you test, you're able to sort of feed that stuff back into your design system and make it sturdier and stronger over time. So design systems have been a really helpful tool for about the last decade or so. But where are we at in 2021 with design systems? So this kind of gets into the present. So where are we with all of this? So I'm going to just talk about a few different trends here in design systems. And the first is that we have a UI library that exists in a tool like Sketch or Figma, and then we also have a coded component library. And this is just kind of by way of where we're at from a technical standpoint with design systems. So we kind of have these parallel tracks going on, and that still opens the door for this slide here, which is whenever I talk to certain clients and companies, and they say, "Oh yeah, we have a design system," what they're actually talking about is, "Oh yeah, we have a Sketch library or we have a Figma library," but there's no coded corollary to that design system, right? So there's still that sort of handoff process between design and engineering, and there's a disconnect, and there's a lot of manual work that's required to sort of bring everything that's present in a static design tool into code, or to backfill what's in code back into a design tool solution. So that's sort of one trend, and this sort of we'll say a pain point of our present state of affairs in the world of design systems. And then the other thing that I think is really worth mentioning is that we're still very much in transition. While design systems have technically been around since 2009, 2010, it's really only been within the last 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 years that organizations have really taken this up, right? So everyone's still very much in transition right now. Our products are in transition, and our people and our processes are in transition as well. So I'll start with products, right? So even material design, which is probably, again, one of the most mature, most comprehensive, most well-funded and well-adopted design systems in the world, still hasn't found its way into all of Google's product line, right? So we still have these sort of old school pre-design system products, and that's for some of the most mature organizations. So the rest of us, we might have 1 or 2, or maybe if we're lucky, like 3 products that are using the design system or slices of products, but we're still in that sort of transition period where the design system is still being adopted across the board. And then our people and our processes are still in transition as well. We still have this notion of like the design handoff, and we're not necessarily working really collaboratively with one another. We're not really necessarily using the design system in our work, and there's still that friction in between teams or in between designers and developers. So those are just kind of a couple areas. There's plenty of other stuff to touch on, but those, as I see it, are the sort of two main trends I want to sort of talk about where those things might be going in the future. So let's talk about the future. Like where is the world of design systems going over the course of the next number of years? In a more immediate timeline, I do think that there's the bridge between design and development is going to continue to close. There's already been a bunch of great tools that are out there. There's React Sketch app from the team at Airbnb. There's tools like Framer and UX Pin and startups like Modules that are all really sort of trying to tackle that world of keeping design and code in sync. And that if you make a change to the code, the design tool is updated. If you make a change to the design tool, the code gets updated. So I'm confident that like over the course of the next 2-3 years, we're really going to see a lot of movement in this so that there's not that sort of disconnect between what's in a design tool and what's in code. The next trend that I think is going to be important is really helping to sort of better orchestrate design systems across technology. And there's already a few different trends that have taken hold that I think are going to grow over time. The first trend is the adoption of design tokens. So what are design tokens? Design tokens sort of at their core are just these implementation agnostic design definitions. You're basically saying Coca-Cola red is this color. Period, right? It doesn't matter if you're talking about a native app. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a website. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a PowerPoint presentation, an email blast, whatever. Coca-Cola red is just this color, right? And then what design tokens do, they're able to sort of transform themselves into the implementation specific variable that gets used and also can be backfilled into design tools as well. So I think that that's going to be design tokens are going to continue to be a helpful tool for orchestrating and keeping that consistency across different technologies, across different sort of implementations. You at least always have Coca-Cola red being Coca-Cola red. It's not being defined in a bunch of different places. I also see on the technology front, I think that there's going to be more progress made in the form of creating design systems that can go to different technology stacks. So right now it's a little tricky here because we have sort of a design system that might be HTML and CSS, but then different applications all use different technologies to bring these things to life. So we have things like Angular and React and Drupal and Vue and Svelte and all of these other things, and new hotness are right around the corner, right? New GitHub repository, a new native platform, whatever that might be. It becomes very, very difficult from a technical standpoint to sort of operate a design system that can reach all of these different applications using so many different technologies. Web components are here as a potential solution for things like this. They're still, in our experience, still a little rough around the edges, but the idea is that we hopefully in the coming years will have an easier solutions to sort of port our design and adopt our design systems across different technology stacks. The other prediction here is that technology is going to continue to evolve. There's going to be more mediums. There's going to be more vehicles. We have good old things like, this is one of my favorite pictures, virtual reality and augmented reality, right? We have voice commands, right? We have Siri, we have Alexa, we have Google Home and things like that. We have all of these other sort of things that are on our horizon just in the digital landscape. And so how might our design systems be able to sort of work these emerging technologies into the fold? in order to, again, in the spirit of creating these cohesive, consistent user experiences, irrespective of whatever technology people happen to be using. And then the last thing, and this addresses the kind of people and the process stuff, right? Right now, we're very much in transition. And whenever we talk about the work that we do as practitioners, we say, oh, I am a product designer, right? I build products, or I build websites. I make websites, right? Whenever we're home for the holidays and in pre-COVID times, right? And your aunt asks you, what do you do for a living again? That's how we respond, right? I make websites. I design websites. I design native apps or whatever. And that's kind of our current mentality, right? And whenever we have that mentality, any sort of style guide or design system is just kind of like hanging off to the side, right? The product is where our focus is. That's what we think that we're doing, is we're building this product, and over here is some documentation. And you can kind of see what happens with this, right? With this kind of mentality, that sort of style guide, once that ceases to reflect the reality of your actual products, it sort of snaps off and fades into the abyss, which is very sad, right? And that's kind of what happens, right? Most of my clients, when I go and work with them, they are quick to show me their sort of design system graveyard from past efforts, right? So what I think is going to happen over the course of the next number of years is this kind of design system first mentality, right? Where we're going to start to mature our organizations and realize that, we are actually creating the design systems that in turn build our products, right? That in turn build our websites and our apps. And when we sort of go through the design system and adopt the design system first mentality, then we're able to better ensure that consistency and cohesion and get all of those benefits that we talked about earlier. So we've come a long way from branding our cattle. And we are confronted with more challenges than ever, right? Again, this isn't slowing down. This is only accelerating. We're not going to sort of hit time out until we figure all of this out. And this is hard. These are hard challenges that we're up against, right? We feel the pinch from every angle. We are on the hook to deliver more things to more people in more formats than ever before in human history. And that's a daunting task. But for what it's worth, I think that is an important task. I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin. He says, "When you're finished changing, you're finished." And I think that that's especially true in the world of the web, which is only 30 odd years old, right? But we can see that even user interface design, period, is only 50 years old. So it's absolutely necessary for us to constantly challenge our processes, challenge our current best practices, and push ourselves to really invent the future. And that's hard, but it's also worth stating that this is a heck of a lot of fun. All this design system stuff is like playing with Lego bricks. And I don't know about you, but I did a lot of that as a kid, and it's a whole heck of a lot of fun. So while this is all hard work, it's also important to recognize we have pretty amazing jobs that we can do. So with that, I encourage you to go out and explore the future of design systems. So thank you all very much for your time.
Hi, Brad.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I like the change of t-shirt there. It's like a magic trick.
Yeah. Maybe.
So
I should have changed back into my other shirt.
yeah, that's what we're aiming for. Consistency, right?
I just lopped off all of my hair, so it's
hard to be consistent.
It can't be too consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. So Brad, for someone who's just about to create and launch a design system, what are maybe one or two critical things to get right to ensure the success of the adoption of that design system? What would you advise?
Well, if people are just getting started, I would one of the first things that I would say is to really spend the time to tee things up right. Designers want to design, developers want to develop. We're very itchy to sort of get into the production of things. It's like, oh yeah, I know what a design system is. It's making buttons. So I'm going to open up my Figma file and I'm going to start making my button. And oh, I'm a developer. I know how to make buttons. And we just sort of jump right in. And so, so much of the work in creating a design system that's actually going to last is really doing the hard work of learning about what the organization needs are, what's painful right now that a design system can sort of help solve. What the sort of interpersonal and the cultural and all of the sort of people process, sort of harder stuff, fuzzier stuff is, and sort of really understand that intimately, and then you're able to sort of craft the design system to really lean into that culture, to really address what needs to be addressed at the organization. So again, it's my advice is to kind of don't just jump right into it. We are very eager at the practitioner level, and we really do need to zoom out and put that sort of more sort of cultural or organizational hat on before we do much of anything.
So solving the right problem. I mean, towards the end of your talk, you talk about like this kind of design system first approach. And as an old timer, one of my questions was, I mean, in the same way that you were finding out the needs of the organization, what about the users? What about their needs? Do you really start by building a design system? So how do you ensure that that design system is solving the right problems?
Yeah, and I'll say that that's one of the biggest sort of traps I see teams fall into is creating a design system kind of in a vacuum or in a bubble. And, what about the users is a really great question. And it's really a design system is kind of the natural byproduct of creating good work rather than the other way around. So whenever I consult with different organizations, they're like, we're going to create a design system. And again, they immediately go, we're going to start building buttons. We're going to start building cards. It's more about, instead of that, what we want to do is come into it with, okay, let's build this product, this very user-centric product. We'll be talking to the users. We'll be doing all this stuff. We'll be making the best product possible. And in order to make the whole of that product, you need to make the parts of that whole. And that's where atomic design comes into play, which is basically connecting the actual product, the pages and the templates and the things that we're actually delivering to our users and that they're interacting with, and the underlying system that powers that experience. So it's less like the system comes first and then we plug that into products. Instead, we build the products and sort of concurrently we're building the parts of that product. And the gorgeous thing about design systems is that as you put those products in front of people and you learn and they give feedback and you're able to hopefully be doing user testing and all that stuff, you're able to sort of roll those insights and that sort of feedback back into the system to sort of really elevate the quality of everything that's using the system. So once you have that feedback loop in place, you're really able to do a lot of really smart and systematic improvement to your products, which is really cool.
That makes a lot of sense. So, but okay, it also seems to be really time intense and expensive and effortful thing to do. When should you not build a design system?
Never. It's that's the short answer is never. I've people have come at me with this question a lot. They're like, well, what about this and what about this and what about this? Even for the most throwaway 3-page website, you should be thinking in terms of reuse and components, because what ends up happening is that the first page that you need to build for your website, you need to do sweat all of these things, and it takes 100% effort. But then the second page, you at least get that, say, the header and the footer of that for free, right? By way of sort of building for reuse. We already do that anyways for like headers and footers, but just by applying that to literally all of the user interface, you're able to sort of have that second template take, say, 80% effort or 70% effort, and then the third template comes along and it's maybe 50 or 40% effort. So there's never really not a time where you should just be thinking of all this stuff as totally unique and bespoke and whatever. But to speak to the time and effort part, there's kind of this conception where it's like, oh, well, building the stuff for reuse, that takes extra time and thought and whatever. It's really more a mental shift than it is an extra a whole hell of a lot of other production work. It's just more thinking about things, naming things maybe a little bit more agnostically, sort of just doing the sort of due diligence mentally. That the sort of production effort remains largely the same. It might be like a little bit more, but of course, once you have those sort of building blocks in place, once you have those tools in place, all of that velocity in terms of reuse, so you have those things built, and each subsequent project, each subsequent page benefits from that. So there's this, and I see it a lot with my client work where they're like, we can't possibly think about this stuff right now. We can't possibly be thinking design systems because we're go. We're trying to get these products out the door. And of course, the sort of irony of that is that in terms of doing that, they're in fact just creating design debt and tech debt and all sorts of stuff, and actually making things way slower for themselves over time. So my advice is like, pump the brakes, go slow to go fast, right? Just take the time, be a little bit more considered up front, and then you'll be paid off in dividends down the road.
It's almost like what you're saying. It sounds like a design system is also just a way of thinking as you're working, not just this like catalog of things. It's a mindset. And as long as you have more than one thing, if you're making two things, make a design system.
It's like to be Swedish for a second.
Go ahead.
It's the IKEA parts, right? It's you could dump a bunch of IKEA parts and say, okay, go build your dresser or your bed frame or your shelving unit or whatever that is. You can do that, but really the design system isn't just those parts, because that actually could be a very frustrating experience if you just dump a bunch of parts over the floor and say go. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be frustrating. So it really does come in the form of the parts plus the instruction manual, plus the guidance, plus the picture of the thing, plus all of like the sort of, again, the instruction, the support, the customer care, all of that stuff collectively is what really sort of, is the design system, right? Because if it's just the parts, it's an incomplete picture.
And sometimes the few instances of design systems that I've encountered, it is often a bit too much focus on the parts and not on all those other things. Is that your experience also? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this comes back to your first question. It's sort of really about sort of taking the time to understand the culture that this design system lives in. And that really gets to the heart of, because otherwise, if it was just about parts, well, we'd all use Bootstrap or Material Design and call it a day. There's no need for creating, sort of something that's really tuned to our organization. So it really matters that we're paying close attention to that culture and that organizational structure, and that influences the architecture and the build and all of that stuff.
Our time is up. That's fabulous answers, Brad. Really enjoyed talking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for coming to our conference.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and enjoy.
Take care.